a range of topics. He, I guess, counts as what you might call a public intellectual, somebody whose views he tries to, is articulated in the public realm in order to generate a deeper discussion about the issues that are concerned to most of us. And now, I'd like to ask, maybe I could begin with Siraj, to just say a few things, maybe respond to what Ghazali said, or what Anna said in his opening speech, and then we'll go to Din and
Thank you, Sharan. Assalamualaikum and good evening, everybody. I was quite surprised when Anas invited me to this one because I not really participated in this kind of forum before, but nevertheless I was pleased to support him because I know him in the oil and gas industry. When I met him, it struck me as a very different person and a lot of ideas, and and he looked things from out of the box. So that kind of impressed me, and that's how I came to the picture. Okay, with regards to this petroleum thing, which he has covered a lot. One of the things I remember clearly in the early 80s, there was such a thing as national depletion policy. Okay, the government under Tun Razak came up with a policy of national depletion policy, whereby 5% of the proceeds to be set aside for the future, so that that can go by itself, and then it become like a Norway. I think Tukur actually touched on the topic. That money can be used during hard times, and it can become a savings, for the country in the future. But somehow along the way, everybody forgot about that. Now nobody even talks about it. So that is, as Anas has pointed out in his book, our fossil fuels has a very finite life. So, if you don't have a saving policy and putting it aside, that will have an impact when this oil, because based on the current production rate, we have about 15 years of oil reserves and 35 years of gas reserves remaining. Of course, they're making new discoveries, but nevertheless, I think the national depletion policy. And on the education, I think one of the issues is English, using English medium. I think education is very critical. I think most conclusions and other researchers I've seen concludes that education is the most critical thing that has to be done. Even in the 70s, one of the biggest reasons for Malaysia to progress and for the middle class to really come up, a lot of us are first generation graduates, especially the baby boomers. Previously they were farmers or fishermen, whatever, and a lot of us are first generation. But I've met people like Sri Silamis, or some people, there are 5 generations, their grandfather was a judge, his great-grandfather was a doctor, that kind of thing. Whereas in Malaysia, you see, most of us are first generation. So that laid the foundation, and that was one of the growth during the 80s and 90s. Because the government spent a lot of money on education, and really boosted up the middle class, and that created a big spin-off. I think I'll stop here first. Maybe I'll leave that. Then we can have a more interactive session. I'd like to have more questions. Yeah. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I'd like, first of all, to congratulate Anas for writing an excellent book. It's a book of essays. I enjoyed reading it. The information contained there are quite revealing. Staggering amount of money has been spent on I don't know what. We have nothing to show, right? Our education system is neglected. Our health services are mediocre. Whole collapse. I think this boils down the theme of the book, I think. Generally, when it's about the issue of governance. I used to be associated with the opposition, and I'm still sympathetic to their cause, fighting for competency, accountability, and transparency. And that is totally lacking in this country today. And what is more pathetic is that most of us don't even care. I think that's our biggest problem. We don't care. We are empathic. Empathy is it's a disease here. Nobody there has to criticize the government, worried about their jobs and so on. But we can discuss this more. But I think this book is quite interesting. Let me comment about education. I was an orphan at the age of 5. My mom was my mother and my father. She left us with nothing except good education that has taken me around the world. So I am a strong advocate of investing in education because it's the one that produces the highest rate of return. You can take any calculation, you can show them. And that is the most important thing is education, education, education. And it's got to be quality education. You have to insist on standards, not compromise and look at grades per se. We need to educate people to have some core values in them as human beings, to know what is right, what is wrong. That's it. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just trying to do this without creating feedback, which is near impossible.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'd like to congratulate Adam for the excellent effort that he's put in the book. I think we all, for those who have read it, realize that his analysis and insight on the very difficult topic that he has undertaken is quite amazing, quite awesome. It's a definite direct critique on the situation of money policy. I mean, the title of the book, Rich Malaysians, Rich Malaysia, Poor Malaysians, ataupun Malaysia Kaya, Rakyat Miskin. I think that tells it all. And he has provided data and analysis on these things. It is actually quite true. It's not a new issue here. It's not new discovery of what's developing in Malaysia, notwithstanding that we are rich with a lot of natural resources. We are rich with oil. We are very lucky. For a small population with a fantastic amount of oil and other natural resources, we should have done much better. I think the book actually, I believe, tries to establish some kind of foundation for a more profound discussion for us to relook, to revisit what we're doing so far. I mean, for instance, the policies that we have, the new economic model, transformation program. How are these policies and programs actually in line with the aspirations of the country? We have, for instance, the Rukun Negara one of the preambles in Rukun Negara is menikmati kemakmuran bersama secara adil dan sama. And of course, you have the Satu Malaysia, Rakyat Didahulukan, and in the new economic model, you have the three-legged goals of high income nation, inclusiveness, and sustainability. Now, as far as the inclusiveness is concerned, as far as Rakyat Didahulukan dan kemakmuran dinikmati bersama secara seksama, are these being fulfilled? Are these being achieved? Are these being part and parcel of the economic policies that we have in ETP and so on? But instead, we're getting, ETP is basically about achieving the GNI of 1.7 trillion. Thereupon, we will achieve GNI per capita of 15,000 US per capita by 2020 or much earlier. It has no correlation with the rest of parameters that reflects the welfare of the rakyat. It hasn't. parameters like household income, wages, and the more general parameters like HDI and so on. It has not. NEM, the new economic model, has actually identified inclusiveness and it has elaborated on the need for the inclusiveness. However, ADP has abandoned that particular aspect of the advocacy. And this is, of course, this is not as a result of the inequality that we're seeing now. It's not a result of ADP. ADP is only about 2-3 years old, right? But it's definitely not going to correct the inequality that we are facing now. I think Anas have reflected this in his book quite well, and I think what I interpret is the intention that Anas has in the book is actually to start off a national discourse, sort of, among the people that matters. We have to revisit, we have to relook at our economic philosophy, our political economy, and see whether what we're doing is the right thing or not. Because 5 years down the road, or 10 years down the road, it would not be reversible. So we have to be now, and the window is not that big because we are facing a lot of liberalization, the effects of globalization. We're going to have the AEC, the ASEAN Economic Community. We're going to have probably signing up to TPPA and APEC, ASEAN plus 4, the RCEP agreement. So these are things that will be subjected to, that may restrict our policy space for us to address the problems that Anas have raised. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adnan. I forgot to mention that in fact this forum is bilingual, so please, if you want to make your comments or want to ask questions in Bahasa Melayu, that's fine too. I know the panelists will be happy to respond in either language. I'd like to, at this point, maybe open it up to the floor. It's a mic, I believe. It was a mic there, but it's such a small room, and there's no reason why you can't come up here and take the mic from me if you have a comment to make. Let's keep it brief in order to generate as much conversation as possible. Maybe just say who you are and just your name, and if you want to address something to one of the panelists. So, Suraj, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I would say something, because just now you caught me a bit off guard. I did not prepare some of the points. I think some of the things I want to highlight to the audience. One is education. I think Anas has covered everything, but he has not covered brain drain. We need to address brain drain, because I think we have 20% leakage where the top brains are leaving the country. And these guys are the potential wealth earners or the movers of the country. So we have to find a way to address the brain drain. And one of the things is, maybe government is too much involved in business. Perhaps government should just be a regulator. They should not do business. Let the private sector do business. There's one thing I want to highlight here, maybe again for discussion. And because it creates conflict of interest, because government is doing it, so they don't enforce. The Security Commission, when it comes to a government company, they give waiver, they give this. So the foreign investors see it as preferential. So that kind of disturbs and then even like I'm throwing another thing, even political donations, for example, perhaps like US, government should pay the money to all the political parties based on membership. So the political parties did not go and ask businesses to contribute, So you can remove, because once you have given some political donation to the party, then when the political party wins the election, then they have to pay you back in some way as a project. But if you can be legislated, of course, I'm just giving some idealistic ideas for discussion. And we have to also strengthen our judiciary, but that is very critical. Because when foreign investors come here, they want to make sure our judiciary is independent. They can see a lot of the arbitration cases are dealing with oil and gas contracts. They prefer the arbitration in Singapore or London. They don't want it to be KL. So they feel that they can get a better arbitration. So that is an area we need to take care. Of course, inclusiveness has already been covered. And also we must have the ability to disagree and exception. Doesn't mean I say something doesn't mean I'm against the government or it's just we agree to disagree. Maybe it's a different way. It doesn't mean that if I criticize the government, I'm an enemy of the government. Or if I criticize a political party or anybody, I'm making no. That particular point we disagree. For example, Mahathir has done good things, we praise him. But if he screwed up, we have a right to criticize him, you know. That is one. The other one is perhaps political parties should not own the media. Make it illegal, so that the truth will come out. Because now the news are all sometimes twisted. So the truth doesn't come out, you know. It is manipulated to, you know. So perhaps we should make a legislation in the future where no political party should own media. So I think more ammunition, more fodder for discussion now. Thank you.
Thank you, Suraj. I guess one of the jobs of a moderator is to try and help bring focus to a discussion. We can produce a laundry list of things that need to be changed or discussed, but maybe the issue is what are our top issues? What are the priorities should we have? Because there are so many things that are going wrong in the country, but where should our focus be in the immediate future in order to push the country forward, in order to create a game changer? I'd like to open and invite you to maybe address that question. What do you think is the priority areas for reform or rethinking, and what would be a game changer for Malaysia? Because I think Malaysians have been waiting for a game changer. We had it in the Reformasi movement to some extent. It's kind of plateaued, and I think we're all looking again, what is it going to give us a push and see this country through in the next coming years? So, please.
Good evening. My name is Shahrazad. I don't really know what the topic of the forum is, but I would like to congratulate Anas for putting in effort, and an excellent effort at that, to actually produce a book with facts as much as possible, with baseline data, to actually inform the public in a popular mode, not a technical or academia mode, but a popular mode of trying to understand some of the issues that the country is facing, in order for us to have to start thinking and putting some intellectual discourse. But over the interviews I've heard on BFM, what comes to me most about Anas is the lack of intellectual hypocrisy. He's putting his thoughts and wanting people to come back, whether you agree or disagree, but open minds up to actually look into our concerns for the future of the nation. And I think we should applaud him for really taking the trouble and also putting it in Bahasa Malaysia so that the reach is really out there. And I think if there's one book that most Malaysians should read, because our average is 2 books a year, that Malaysians should read to understand more of the socio-economic condition of the country, should be this book. And what I would like to ask the moderator, the panel, is from a general public popular presentation of the book, what do you think the impact could be to the general public that reads this book and liberates a little bit to a more critical mind? Would it help? You know, should more people do this kind of stuff and not just put it in an academic framework? Thank you very much.
Actually, I managed to read the book before coming to the thing. So I think he has put it in a very nice way. He is not, I think he has done it in a very good way. He's not trying to attack somebody, or, you know, it's better to have the law of attraction. You put it nicely, and then you attract more people to get in. And he's put it, he didn't put it from a political point of view, he has put it from an academic and an intellectual point of view. So I think he wants to create a debate and he wants to get it going. But the only thing is, English, who is going to read? Okay, now we have the Bahasa Malaysia book. Maybe one way is to have it, you know, in the media like PMM or other media which can maybe translate this and have it to a wider audience through the, especially the TVs and others and radio. Then the reach would be wider. Because reading, as you said, we only read 2 books a year. So 50%, you know, for the people who are reading have to read this book. So I think, how do you reach the people? The problem is always, how do you get the message across to as many people as possible? I think that will be the issue.
So we'll need Utusan Malaysia and TV3 to run interviews with us.
What I'm trying to say is that don't expect those newspapers or journals to publish anything that's being perceived as being negative. This is why the Malaysian public is kept in the dark about many, many things. I try to overcome that with my own blog. People in the rural areas will go to my blog. I feel maybe I have a problem of communicating with the average guy. I think it's time that we demand greater accountability in the government. Look at how they handle this MH 370. It's a total mess. Shows the government is inept and incompetent. And we cannot do anything about it for the next 5 years because they are entrenched here. And when there's a next election, we don't have electoral reforms, they will still be here. I'm not very optimistic about change. I won't give up. I'm not optimistic. But if enough of us continue to persist and demand change and show it on our electoral room, on our votes, then things will happen. In the meantime, they are too comfortable, they are too elitist. Orang bangsawan have no connection with the people whatsoever because they don't know what hardship is. I know because I grew up from a low income family. My mother was just a nurse. I know what is hardship. I know how we struggle to get a good degree. Nobody gave me an opportunity. I fought. I'm 75 years old. So when I was in the 60s, there was no NEP. Nothing. I could compete for a scholarship. And today, with all the NEP we give, all the support, we still produce mediocre people. What the hell is happening in this country? I'm asking. So it's time you guys wake up. I'm 75 years old. Maybe I may be here for the next 10 years. Let me assure you that I'll fight this thing. I will try and make it possible, change possible. Because I've got grandchildren and maybe great-grandchildren coming along the way. I cannot allow this thing to go on. That's my comment.
I think a lot of the issues that's raised and will be discussed tonight are actually non-partisan issues, or bipartisan issues. They are non-political, apolitical. For instance, rich Malaysia, poor Malaysians. I mean that's non-political about it. But I'm not saying that I'm disagreeing with you. We need change, right? We definitely need change. However, we have to achieve it, right? But I'm not saying that it should be this government or that government. We have to change, and we have to. I think the point Anas is putting forth is there's got to be a more widespread discussion on this matter, on the issues of should we have a policy where you place more importance and priority to investors and big companies. This is what ETP is all about. Right? This is what ETP is all about. If you have the time to go through ETP, you will realize that ETP, and that's the main driving economic policy now. It's basically about so-called trying to raise the private investment. That's the main thing. It does not mention anything about raising the household income. Does not mention anything about improving the wages. It does in the second chapter. You will realize they do show some projections on wages based on their baseline 2009 against 2020 on nominal basis, right? I mean the prices are not factored for inflation. But once you factor it with inflation, you will realize that notwithstanding whatever they say about the high-tech job opportunities and better wages, the projections that they are making is actually is basically status quo. There is no marked change, marked improvement in the wages. Now, if you actually gather the numbers that they have produced in the ETP book on all the NTEA's projects, right? You gather all the wages and you collect the GNI, you realize that the wage over GNI for ETP is basically is going to regress to 21%. In 2005, it was 28%. Currently, it's still hovering about 28, 29%. But what's projected in the ETP is 21%. That means wages are going to go down, and that's on nominal basis, right? So this is what we have on the table now. So now, okay, that's because the belief in the need for export-driven, profit-driven, investment-driven policies. Now, these are serious economic doctrines that we have to sort of decide on. They have decided on that. Now, similarly, if we are going to talk about alternative government, we've got to also ask, okay, Pandangan Rakyat, what are you going to bring? Are you going to bring similar policies? Are you going to bring similar policies? Are you going to be neoliberal as Barisan Nationalist? That's why I'm trying to point out here. Right? It is a very bipartisan and non-partisan approach that we should take. Not to cite any party, but as far as other issues that are concerned, corruption and whatnot, we need real political change there. Right? We need political change there.
I'd like to add what he has mentioned just now. I think we need economic growth anyway, we need investment for sure. But what is happening is we need to upgrade our workers to a higher level. That means you need more automation, so that the work value of a worker can be upgraded. Because we are still using operator level, Other countries like Germany and other countries that upgrade, even Singapore, upscale, so that one person can do two person's job. So whereby you can have a higher salary. But we are so happily bringing in the foreign labor and then keeping the average wage down. So perhaps there should be a policy whereby we have to upscale ourselves with more automation. For example, when Europe changed to 40 hours to 35-hour week, their intention was to create more jobs. But what the companies did, they automated more so that it didn't affect the productivity. So they managed with 35-hour week. So it did not reduce unemployment in Europe. The unemployment will still remain the same. Because you cannot go and do these tricks, and they thought because they calculated, okay, so many man hours, so many people divided by so much. If I make it 35-hour week, then there's 5 hours less. So you calculate mathematically, okay, you create so much employment. No, the companies automated more and increased the productivity. That's what Japan did. When the US yen went up about 50-60% against US dollar, they went and automated more to bring their cost of production lower so that they can still compete and export to US. So I think the same thing needs to happen in Malaysia. We have to upscale our workers, whereby an operator is earning 1,000 ringgit now, but because his job scope is so small, it's less automated, so that's all he can earn. But if we can improve the productivity and he can do a bigger job with automation and everything, maybe his salary can be 3,000, his basic salary, and we need less workers. So maybe we don't have to import so many foreign labor. So the foreign labor, maybe there should be a plan whereby other than the service sector, for example, if you're a waiter, of course you cannot automate waiting. But in the factory you can automate. But you can make it self-service. For example, like petrol station, they make it self-service so that you do away with the labor. So this is, upscaling need to be done in a proper way so that the real wages can go up. Okay.
So
So yeah, please.
I'm Lal Chan, ex-Tenaga National. Therefore, and I had the privilege of working with Siraj and the NKG labs 3 years, nearly 4 years ago. I must say one thing, maybe we are going a little bit off track here. I'd like to bring this back in. I think as Anas has put up a very good book, it is, say, not bipartisan, I say societal. It's for society, not with any political tinges on it. And I think very practical and pragmatic. I managed to read a few of his articles. In a way, I think I consider myself a bloody socialist, and his book seems to be supporting those perspectives. What has been mentioned, Siraj mentioned about education. True, education takes a fair chunk of the national revenue. In the past, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, it did the same. Today, probably we are spending much more per capita on education. But what are we getting? Are we getting people who are qualified to do the jobs when we have nearly 100,000 graduates who are unemployable? I don't call them unemployed graduates, they are unemployable because talking to people, they just can't be suited for any particular jobs. And what has the government done in this education? At an academic science forum like this, it was mentioned that at least 2 generations of students from primary up to tertiary have been failed by the government in creating unemployable graduates. A large number of those who are competent, who are capable, have abandoned the country to go overseas. And I think something like 800,000 Malaysians graduates have gone overseas. They are doing very well. They are equivalent to the best anywhere. We have lost that brain drain. Trying to bring in talent corp, to bring in a few thousand, and letting off tens or hundreds of thousands is a stupid issue. It's a stupid policy. And I think this is one of the things that's been made. Malaysians are very good at documenting policies, strategies, and so on. But in my own work on energy, I found a number of government policies which are self-contradicting. Examples, very simple, biofuels policy, NAP and public transport, renewable energy from biomass and biomass strategy, all of them are contradicting one another. What is the thing needed is good education so that we have people who can produce more, inclusiveness, and in a way, it's rather sad that the MH370 incident has at least brought to a certain end, or at least temporary end, racialism and political harboring among, mongering among the press. People are one Malaysia. Nobody talks of what is the racial share of the Malaysian population who was flying on that, or the crew themselves. They are simply Malaysians. That is something that we need to get in. I have said in several forums that the Prime Minister says, Rakyat didahulukan, but the implementation of policies is Rakyat dipedulikan. I think I may be biased because of my own involvement of energy efficiency and renewable energy. And to come back to Pemandu, when I worked with Siraj and the others in the oil, gas and energy lab, I had great respect for the Pemandu personnel who were there, the private sector people who participated in this, and the consultants who were engaged on that. ETP was a damn good book. If you have a chance to read it, fine. I have certain specific interest in that. But the ETP review that was done within 12 months screwed up everything. And a lot of the ETP and Pemandu's work was criticized very severely by this organization, REFSA. And when I met Pemandu people to say, how are you not able to answer REFSA? They said, we did. And when I looked at the answer, it was no answer at all. It didn't say anything. And myself, being particularly involved in some of the things that are documented in black and white in the ETP have been changed because of political intervention. And I think many of you would have heard of the scandals in feed-in tariff for photovoltaic, which involved the former KSN's daughter and son-in-law. I feel bad because, in my opinion, the former KSN was a gentleman in the way he conducted himself. This has been a bad situation. And I'd like to correct one thing. where Tunku Uli gave a very brave speech on the situation in Malaysia. He mentioned about the non-productive expenditure and using Petronas revenue as a cookie jar where the government seems to dip its hands in. But there's one thing I'd like to correct. The subsidies for gas that are going to the power generators are not actually giving them profits. I have argued against this with the Pakatan YPs who have said the same thing. The subsidies benefit consumers because if those subsidies were not there, fuel and electricity costs would be higher. But the bad thing is, by these blanket subsidies, the rich are getting more. A few weeks ago when we had the Islamic Arts Museum, where somebody mentioned that the rich are benefiting 6 times more than the deserving poor from the subsidies. That's why the subsidies, the blanket subsidies should be removed, direct subsidies should be given to the deserving, and I believe Commandu had something to do. There are a lot of things others, but I'd like others to have comments. Thank you.
I'd like to invite some of the younger people in the audience, those who've come through our education system, who are being in some ways addressed by some of these issues. We could maybe take a few more questions from the floor, comments on the floor.
Maybe I'll answer Lal Chan's thing. Education, I think, yes, keep the thing on the day on the head. The quality is more important, not the quantity. And so we need to, no point having so many colleges churning out, not capable students. Better to have a controlled one, so that, once I was in Chennai for some entrance exam, there was a long queue. It seems for the exam they only take 20 million people sit for the exam to select a few thousands, So that kind of filtration happens. So that's how the American companies, they go there and just recruit them and block. And if you are, for example, IIT graduate, if you go to Sweden, automatic PR. Straight away, as you enter only, you are IIT graduate, you are given an immediate, So that's how you have to value the brain. So as he mentioned, 800,000, these guys are the ones who will be creating the wealth. They are the wealth creators. So that's one thing, and of course I agree with him also on the power, because actually the subsidy goes to the consumer. But what the opposition are giving is the power, the reserve. Why should we have the 40% reserve? Because even though we don't use electricity, they still get paid. It's a take or pay contract, which I think the opposition are in. Thanks.
Just get more. Very useful. I was asking actually, because also some of the younger people in the audience, please speak up. It's your future that is being discussed here. Yeah? Dalam bahasa Melayu atau bahasa Inggeris, kepulang kepada Anda.
Thank you. Sharad, what are you? Question.
I'm a radio journalist.
The reason why I ask is, Marty's grandfather and my grandfather came in the same boat from India. And yes, dear Jadimla, you say Masariki Mama. The reason why I'm saying is, it doesn't matter whether you're a Malay, Indian, Chinese, Iban, Kadazan, Bidayu, we are all anak bangsa Malaysia. I think that is important. And that's what just now when Dr. Dean was mentioning. My name is Taslim. I NGO known as Jihad for Justice. Jihad bukan yang secularism. It's a different form. Because the best jihad, according to the Prophet ﷺ, is to go to an unjust ruler and seek for justice. I like to relate two things, and then one just short ones. I'm involved in 3 high-end industries in Silicon Valley, directly, employing something like about 600 people in 3 different areas. I've been involved in that for the last 18 years. We started small, 5 of us. 4 of my college mates from India, and I'm going to Malaysia. Hindu, Christian, Muslim. We have 115 Malaysians qualified working in those 3 industries. Well, 150, 35 are Malays. I'm not being racist, I'm trying to give you a breakdown. 35 are Malays. There are some Indian Muslims, Indians.
we were wanting to relocate one of the design facility to Penang. So we offered all the 150 out of that, but we need about 30 odd to come here first. We offered expat package to all of them. And we were all in the capacity of something like about 120 to 150,000 US a year. Not one taker from the Malaysians. So I asked this girl, Sharifah. Her husband also works in another unit of the industry. Adik, kenapa tak balik? I said, betul, we don't want to come and rock in that system. And that spoke a million words as far as I was concerned, because if you talk about a Chinese not wanting to come in, an Indian not wanting to come, it's okay. But you have a Tara-bred Malay Muslim who says, I don't want to come. And they're growing up very well. The children are very intelligent and they're as Muslims. So, regarding education, just now Siraj was mentioning about entrance exam. They've got this medical school and it's Christian Medical College. It used to be that, until today I think it's one of the top schools. They used to take 60 students in Wedlock facility and 60 students in Ludhiana in Punjab. 120 students. And the entrance exam used to be written by 200,000 people. So you can imagine what level of quality they have been at. And I just came after speaking at the University of Malaya, Tamil Language Society's 30th youth camp. Out of the 40 of them, I said, how many of you are on PTPN? 36 of them, I think, raised their hands. And they are graduating. I said, what will be your liability? He says, I'll be graduating with 45,000 ringgit. That's day one. Day one. And here, my question to the panelists, I'm sure you, I think we have been speaking about this for many years, okay? We all know the system is wrong, we know it's corrupt, we know that there's wastage, but how are we going? The change is what we want. But as what Dr. Din said just now was, either it's blocked. You go to the kampung and you speak to people there. No, Prime Minister Baru, I'm sorry, not so political. Oh, ini bring satu. I kata ambil, bring. Tapi you tahu mana nak undi? No. Nanti kena jawab di akhirat. Nanti kena dijawab di akhirat. Ambil, bring. Nanti kena dijawab akhirat. So we are actually, just now when Brother Siraj was saying, idealistic. It's actually idealistic in the present context, but how are we going to make this change happen? The youths of today, wherever we go, we speak to the youths. And the youths today, they say, yes, we need change, we need transparency, we need all those things. But the moment you speak about truth, as he said, you must agree to disagree. I was a pro all the while until I disagreed on one major issue in 2007, and you are branded as anti. All I said was, hey, look here, my price is only 100 million. You have given it to somebody for 160 million.
What the hell is that?
I said, you talk about 10% is okay. 60%. And somebody says to me, that's why I tell you, your partner should be an humble person. Sorry, this is real. That's what happened. Your partner must be an humble person. So that he can immediately I give him the money to marry the second wife, third wife, and fourth wife. Sorry, that is what we're looking at. Reality, how do we actually do it? I'm only 46. You're 75. Tapi mine, 46, reverse, that's my age. We have been talking about it. We are talking about anti-DPP. All these things. But is there anything that we can do which can be a catalyst to make the youths think differently? because I think the community is changing. I think the Malays, my brothers, fellow Malays, brothers and sisters, have actually now the youngsters have woken up. They say enough is enough, because somebody, I remember when I was in London, told me, one of the senior people, cabinet people went there and spoke about, oh, you must be grateful. You know what the person told me? I said, is it your grandfather's money that I am today here on a JPA scholarship? That was a question asked by a young Malay engineer. So, I hope the youths today, and need the answer from the panel, so I can go back and speak to the next group of youths in 2 days' time. There'll be a bigger crowd. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
We just get a few more quick comments from anak muda di bilik sini, ya. Anda dicabar untuk jawab. Ini adalah masa depan anda dan dibincang. Tentu ada pendapat, ya. Just one. I'll be satisfied with just one anak muda, somebody under 30. You know, exclude everybody here on the panel and myself several times over. Yes, anak muda di belakang. Thank you. Sorry for the. Make comment, whatever.
My name is Mutiara Abdul I'm a student from UIA. I'm not sure whether I'm going to give a commentary or a question, but just to respond to what I've read through the book written by Anas Faizli. I think like others panelists have said, it is very not like reading. It's full of information, full of meaningful presentation of what happened in our society.